When I was first starting out in the tech industry, I wish someone with decades of experience sat me down and talked me through exactly what my salary progression would look like as I developed my tech career and shared the lessons they learned along the way. It's only now, looking back over the past 16 years that I've had in the tech industry, that this information about your salary expectations is needed now more than ever, and how you can aggressively move up in your tech career, especially considering that more people are working in tech than ever and more companies are recruiting for technical professionals every single day. Quite frankly, there's never been a better time to level up in your tech career and scale your tech salary to the next level. But you wouldn't know unless you know exactly what salary you're expecting. So that's why in this video, I'm going to show you my 16+ year salary progression working in the tech industry, from the first role I ever landed in the industry to where I am now, and all the lessons in between I wish I had learned sooner when it comes to salary progression, like moving up in the tech industry and taking advantage of all the opportunities that the tech industry has to offer. Now, for context, like I've said, I've been in the tech industry for 16 years and I've had 11 different tech roles throughout my career, where my sole goal was to push my tech career to the next level and increase my salary as much as possible at the same time. So it's kind of crazy looking back at my career, but I started out in tech at 16 years old. I'm 32 right now. When I was growing up, I basically liked to play basketball a lot. I like to play video games a lot, and I built my first computer at 16 years old. And with me doing that, I never really was into school, but my school district ended up having a vocational school that we can go to. There was an IT class that was focused on helping you get the Cisco CCNA certification, and there was an IT class that was focused on helping you get the CompTIA A+ certification. Now, again, like I said, I was never really big into school, so I just went into getting the CompTIA A+ certification, and a month after I landed the cert at 16 years old, I started my first job making $10 an hour. This was an IT help desk internship, and again, I'm 16, I'm still in high school. This was my first job ever, so with working this role, even though they only let me do but so much, I'm the type of person that always wants to try to do as much as possible, so I started asking them to let me start reformatting hard drives and start doing more technical work that they had available for me. So I started expanding my tech professional experience, even with this first role at 16 years old. Now, from there, I didn't have another tech job until I was 18 after I graduated high school. I ended up going to college on a basketball scholarship, and I ended up going to school for computer science. While I was in school for computer science, during my freshman year, I landed another IT help desk internship. This one was really special for me because I ended up getting sponsored for my government security clearance, and it paid $12.65 an hour. So with this job, it was doing more basic IT help desk technician work. I was fixing computers, I was answering IT tickets that came into the help desk, and I was really just trying to learn as much as possible. I was shadowing people in the help desk department, I was shadowing tier 3 help desk, and I was also talking to the people that were focusing on our network. So I really was just trying to learn as much as possible while I was working this role. Honestly, I thought I hit the jackpot with this job. I really didn't even plan on leaving, but it wasn't until I met somebody at my college, which is now a good friend to me. He told me about the National Society of Black Engineers, which is known as NSBE, and he was telling me about how there were internships that you could get all over the US. I had never heard about people being in college and going to go get jobs in different states. He was also telling me about how he was making $22 an hour, and remember, I was making $12.65. So I ended up staying at this internship until my junior year, where I ended up landing my next job. And I didn't get this job in a traditional way. I went to the National Society of Black Engineers National Convention. I thought I was going to be able to land a new job here, but the first night that I got to the conference, they actually ended up kicking me out of the organization. I don't want to get too deep into that right now, but long story short, I went out there young and dumb, was doing stuff I shouldn't have done. I woke up the next morning, they told me I couldn't go to the career fair, I couldn't attend any talk, workshops, or anything at the conference. So then from there, I ended up just going back to my hotel room, and I started applying for jobs on usajobs.gov, and I started applying for jobs on clearancejobs.com, because again, I wasn't going to let that stop me from getting to the next level in my career. As soon as I found out my friend was making $22 an hour, and he also told me he was living in LA, everything paid for, they also paid for his car as well, you know, I wanted to see what that was like. I started applying for these jobs, and I ended up getting a new job as a computer science trainee for the federal government. And if you're familiar with the federal government and their job series, this was a 1550 job job series role. And this job, I had came in at a GS4. GS level 4 was not really that high. It did not pay a whole bunch of money, but I did end up going and working out of state. This job, I was working at Hanscom Air Force Base outside of Boston, Massachusetts. With this job, I believe when I started working as a GS4, I was making probably about $14.50 an hour. And while I was completing my degree, I ended up getting promoted to a GS5, which brought me up to $15.30 an hour. So again, at this time, I'm 20 years old, working this job, getting my experience for the federal government, and I was supporting the United States Air Force at this time, and it was a great experience for me. Now, I know a lot of people's dream job was the federal government, but picture this. You're in this situation where you literally are talking to friends in college and they're making $22 an hour. I met some people making $30 an hour. I really wanted to go out there and try to get into those higher paying roles because I knew it was possible. So for me, once I find out that something's possible, I'm going for it. So I did not stop with this federal government job that I had. I ended up applying for another job with a company called Northrop Grumman, and this was going into the last semester of my senior year. I ended up landing a cyber software engineer internship, and it paid me $22 an hour. So I did finally get to that $22 number. I was super excited. During this role, what I was doing was writing different software packages for our Red Hat Enterprise Linux environment, and I was doing a lot of automation. So I started learning about Puppet at the time. I started writing different bash shell scripts at the time, and this role was really my first role where I was actually doing software engineer type of work, because even though the federal government role, my title was computer science trainee, I wasn't really doing any computer science type of work. It was all project management work, and that's why I like to prefer to work for government contractor companies, because you actually do the technical work. You're not just making sure that projects get completed on time. So this role that I had with Northrop Grumman, I got this in August of 2014, and this was right before I graduated from college. I ended up graduating college December 2014 from Virginia Commonwealth University, and that was a whole journey for me in itself because it took me multiple years to learn how to code, but I did end up learning how to code, completing my degree, and I actually ended up being the class speaker at the time coming out of college, and I graduated with 7 different job offers. I had offers to go to work for many different companies. They were all government contractor companies or federal government agencies. Remember, I had that opportunity where I was working for the federal government. They offered me to continue working for them through this program called the Air Force PAC program, which is PAQ. With this program, I would have been able to go to school and get my master's full time while still getting paid my full salary. And then I would have went to start working full time for the federal government after getting my master's. But that role would have only paid me $35,000 a year. Again, you know, for me, I want to get paid a lot of money while I'm working in my tech career. So with that job, it would have been a great opportunity, but I just couldn't take $35,000 a year. And I would have been stationed out of Langley Air Force Base, which is in Hampton, Virginia, if anybody's familiar with that. And even though this position was only going to pay me $35K, it was a position with the federal government where you are getting automatic promotions every year. About 4 years in, I think I would have been around $75K, but I had job offers from many different companies that varied anywhere from $50,000 to about $75,000 a year. I ended up looking at these different job offers. I had offers from Raytheon. I had offers from Northrop Grumman to continue to work there. I had offers from Lockheed Martin. I had offers from multiple different federal government agencies, and I decided to go work for Raytheon as an embedded software engineer. At this point, I'm 22 years old. I started this job January 2015, and I was making $72,500 a year. With this position, I ended up writing a lot of code in C and C++. I also did some front-end work as well. They had me utilizing C# and JavaScript for some of our GUIs that we needed to have built out, and I had never done any of this stuff before. But honestly, being a software engineer long-term was never in my plans. I always wanted to go overseas and be an overseas government contractor, because when I was growing up, I saw people that lived in the DC area that were literally buying mansions all cash, and they were buying BMWs all cash, and that was something that I always wanted. So for me, lifestyle is everything, and you can design your life to where it works exactly how you like it, to where you have a job that's going to pay you the salary that you want, to where you have a job that's going to allow you to travel the world and do all the things that you want. So for me, overseas government contracting was going to be that opportunity. So I ended up staying as a embedded software engineer for about 2 years. My second year into to work in this role, I got promoted to a level 2 embedded software engineer. But at this point, I had started looking for overseas jobs. So I ended up going on our internal website and I found a job that was overseas. That was a radar system engineer level 2 role. And when I reached out to the hiring manager about this role, he told me that my resume looked good and he thought that I would be a good fit, but I didn't have the Security Plus certification. And that's really when I learned how valuable certifications were in the GovTech industry, because I never really knew, even though I had already benefited from it with the CompTIA A Plus certification at 16 when I got my first GovTech job literally a month after. But I didn't know why I landed the job, and it was because the CompTIA A Plus certification is one of those DoD IAT level 1 certifications that allows you to work help desk roles. So that's why I was able to land that job. And when it came to this radar system engineer level 2 role, the hiring manager told me that every single technical engineer on the program had to have the Security Plus. So I went and got the certification, but by the time I got back to them, they had already filled the role. So he told me that they typically have people coming back and forth from overseas, and there should be some more opportunities available. So I just kind of waited around to see if something else would come. And luckily, since I was being patient, about a few months later, he reached back out to me and said, "Hey, we have more positions available. Are you still interested?" So I ended up applying for the role. I did the interview, crushed it, of course, right? I really do a good job coming into interviews and getting those job offers verbally during the interview. So I ended up getting this next job, and it paid me $140,000, mostly tax-free, as a radar system engineer level 2. And this role was based out of Japan. So I ended up moving from the States at 24 years old, and I moved overseas to Japan without my family, without any friends. Nobody was there with me, but it was literally the best decision that I had ever made in my life, because when you work overseas, you're able to make double your base salary. They also pay you bonuses. They also pay you uplifts, and uplifts are basically an additional percentage for working overseas, or additional percentage on your base salary for maybe working overnight or living in a certain area. And with having a higher salary while working overseas, it allows you to make more money. Typical math is whatever your base salary is in the States, you'll make double overseas on average. And when I was working this role in Japan as a radar system engineer, this was the first time that I had did any of this type of work. So with this type of work, you're basically out working in the field and you're the technical SME on site. So if anything happens to the radar system, you're the person there that's going to troubleshoot any of the software issues. You're going to analyze what's happening with the hardware by utilizing the software and your analytical skills, and then you get the radar back up and running. So I ended up living in Japan for about 18 months before I wanted to move on and get my next role, because again, I'm all about the money. So I'm not happy until I get to that 200K plus salary mark. So at 25 years old, I was able to land another job that took me from a level 2 engineer to a level 4 engineer. And this job was a senior test engineer level 2 / cyber engineer role. They have funny job titles, but with this job, I was doing similar work that what I was doing before as a radar system engineer in Japan. And this role in Taiwan that I ended up getting, it paid me $225,000 a year. When I got to $225,000 a year, it allowed me to literally change my life completely, because at that point, I was bringing in anywhere from $8,000 to $9,000 after benefits. There's no taxes that are coming out. Everything was already paid for. And then I even had some paychecks that were up to $15,000. So when I was able to do this, I didn't have any bills. I was able to save money, invest, and really grow in my career. Because for this role, before I was able to actually go out to Taiwan, I had to go to Boulder, Colorado for IBM's training. We went out to IBM for about 2 weeks and we did training on their IAX system. IAX is IBM's Unix-based operating system that runs on their servers. So we had to be specifically trained on these servers that we would be working on out in Taiwan. I was able to get a lot of experience there. I was able to get certified in IBM IAX systems, and I already had a lot of experience working with Red Hat Enterprise Linux from the radar system engineer role and from my cyber software engineer role back when I was in college working for Northrop Grumman. Now, when it came to me getting this role, because at the time I was an engineer level 2, many people told me to not apply to this level 4 engineer role. They told me that there was no way that I was going to be able to get this role, and I still went for it anyway. So when it comes to leveling up your tech career and scaling your tech income, you really need to push yourself to get to the next level. I don't really believe in making lateral moves unless it absolutely makes sense. When you're moving around in your career, you want to always get a actual bump in your salary salary, and you want to get an actual promotion, and you want to level up in your grade as well as you're moving up. Make sure that you don't let anybody hold you back, or you don't really listen to the people that say, oh, you have to go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, then to level 4, then to level 5, because that's definitely not the case. If you're able to go into the interviews and show the impact that you'll make and show how the experience that you have and the leadership skills that you're already displaying in your current role are going to be able to have an impact in your new role and show how you can really bridge that gap, they will give you the job opportunity. So that's how I was able to really move up really quickly. While I was in Taiwan, I stopped working on my master's program and started focusing on the CISSP instead, because I knew that would get me the salary that I wanted. So I was studying for the CISSP, and again, I'm just doing this kind of juggle back and forth, not really finishing anything because I keep getting conflicting information. And before I knew it, I didn't finish my CISSP when Taiwan would have been the best place for me to get it done. So if I had to give you some advice when it comes to your career, I would definitely say get the certifications before you focus on getting your master's. And once you get the certifications, all you have to do is focus on renewing those certifications, because if you have the time to sit down and get the certifications, study, learn the information, then you can spend the time getting your master's. Because when I first signed up for my master's, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I signed up for my master's when I was literally in my first year out of college, right? I didn't have much experience at all, and I signed up for that master's program, and I ended up dragging it out for 5 years, and I mostly completed it. I finished 27 out of 30 credits a couple years later after I left Taiwan, and then I got to the capstone and I found out that it was 400 hours for the capstone, and I just didn't finish it. I came across some other directors as well that have been through that same program, and they didn't do the capstone either. Again, that's another story for a different day, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot about system engineering, but once I found out it wasn't going to get me the money I was looking for, I just kind of like lost focus on it. I ended up staying in Taiwan for a year because this position was very different. I ended up living on a mountain, so I worked out there for a year, and then I came back to the States because I had a couple of different contracts lined up out in Qatar. Now, this time when I came back to the States, this is November 2019, right before COVID hit. I thought that I was going to be deploying for Qatar, and when I ended up getting back home, I'm just visiting my family, waiting for my next deployment to go overseas, and January 2020 is when COVID ended up hitting.
More than 150,000 new cases of COVID-19 were reported to WHO yesterday. Almost half of those cases were reported from the Americas.
The whole world was flipped upside down. The company really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to deploy overseas to Qatar, so they ended up canceling my flight because the international airports started closing down. I ended up getting a job again as a radar system engineer out at Fort Hood, and I was there for about 18 months before I ended up going back overseas because I had such a hard time getting there. Now, when you work in the States, all you're going to do is make your base salary. My base salary really wasn't as high. My base salary while I was in the States was $105,000 a year. To me, that was like a very, very big pay cut, and I really wanted to get overseas as fast as possible. My next role that took me overseas was a senior system administrator level 2 role, and this role is where I ended up working in South Korea. So I worked in South Korea on a UAV program, and this program was a great program to work on. I didn't really enjoy working overseas in Asia during the pandemic because it just wasn't a lot of fun, right? Just imagine where you're at work, one person ends up getting a COVID scare, everybody has to go and do a test, they're not allowing you to go to work. It was just not a good working environment. I was on that program for 12 months. It was a good time, and when I worked as a senior system administrator level 2, I was making $210,000 a year, and that role was great because we were working 40 hours a week. It was a very light workload. Again, this position was just being the system administrator for the UAV system. So as we were doing different missions, we were the technical SMEs on site to make sure that all of our comms were correct, to make sure all the servers were good to go, and just to make sure that everybody had access, like the UAV pilots. Also make sure that the sensor people that worked for other government contractor companies had everything that they need for us to have a successful mission. So after leaving South Korea, I didn't want to fall into the same trap that I fell into when I first left Taiwan. Again, I only had my base salary in the States, and my base salary really wasn't that high. By the time I left South Korea, my base salary was around $110,000 a year. So I had to figure out a way to make $200,000 a year in the States. So imagine this, you've been making over $200,000 a year for the past 5 years, and now you're coming back to the States because you want to spend time with your family. COVID was happening. You really didn't want to deal with that stuff anymore. So it was time for me to really put my skills to the test and see if I could still land a high paying 200K plus per year tech job in the States. So before I started to get back into my job search, I took about 8 months off of work. And when I took those 8 months off, I started just targeting different companies, targeting different roles that paid anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000 base salary. And one of my friends was working at a GovTech cybersecurity startup where the base salary was $175,000 a year. And he told me that it was 100% remote. He loved everything about it. I knew this was the role that I wanted. So I focused really, really hard on getting this role. I ended up spending a lot of time preparing for this interview. This company focused a lot on APIs, which I really didn't have too much experience with outside of doing things for my own business. I use Zapier a lot and I utilize different webhooks and APIs for different tools and technology just for my business, but nothing at work. So I had to lean into that experience that I had in my business and show that I understood APIs at the job. I also utilized Postman Labs and I started learning Postman so that way I could do a good job at this cybersecurity company. I ended up having 3 different interviews for this company, and after the first interview, literally the director had told me that he wanted me to work for the team, and everything from there was really more of a formality. Once you end up becoming really good at interviewing and you get it down pat, you can come into interviews and get job offers like this. Now, I ended up landing this job as a senior federal technical account manager. My base salary was $175,000. When I first started with the company, my bonus was 10%, but they raised it up to about 15-20% after being there for a couple of months. And then I also received RSUs, which were pre-IPO shares for this company once I got started with them. So my overall total comp at 29 years old was $275,000 a year working for this GovTech cybersecurity startup as a federal technical account manager. Now, at this point in my life, I've made enough money. I've saved and invested a lot of money. I had different investments that were cash flowing. I had different businesses that were making me money. And so I was really at a point where I didn't have to work if I didn't want to. I worked this job for 12 months and I ended up losing my grandmother and I went through a divorce and I wanted to take some time off of work. I kept getting told by other people that I should just take FMLA, but for me, I didn't feel like that was the right way to go about it. I just felt like there was a negative connotation with taking FMLA for mental health issues. So I ended up resigning from the job and letting them know that I needed to focus on my mental health and get a therapist and just really start working through everything I was going through in my home life. And I enjoyed every second that I had working at this company, working with and supporting my government customers, making sure their environment had full coverage because the company that I worked with was a cybersecurity asset management platform. And with working here, I was able to get exposed to a lot of different things. I met the CEO of the company. I was able to really start getting my foot in the door in the tech sales realm, which was something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. So you can't ever be afraid to put yourself out there to do roles that you've never done before, because people didn't think that I'd be able to go from being a technical engineer to working on the tech sales side. My goal was always to become a sales engineer at some point because I know about the sales engineer's salary. You can make anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 a year being a sales engineer. So after my senior federal technical account manager role, I ended up taking off another 10 months with this job. And then I ended up getting a job as a senior SATCOM system administrator for another government contractor company. Now, I didn't work at this company for that long because everything that started happening in the government technology space, there started being layoffs for federal government employees, and there also just started being a lot of uncertainty. So for me, my main thing is to always make sure that I can take care of me and my family. So I started looking for more mission critical GovTech roles that I could do. As I worked at this company as a senior SATCOM system engineer, my base salary was $160,000 a year, but they also had me traveling all around, and I really didn't like that. I was told initially with this role that it was only going to be 25% travel, but really what ended up happening was I was traveling 3 to 4 weeks out of the month. So I was living out of like Holiday Inns and things like that. I wasn't making the money I was making from overseas, and I just felt like I wasn't spending enough time with my family. So I started looking for roles that were more mission critical and paid me the type of money that I was really used to while I was working overseas. So this is one of the first jobs that I only stayed at for only 4 months, and I ended up getting a job offer as a senior test engineer for another government contractor, and I'm back doing the same work that I was doing before, and I'm literally loving every minute of it. As a senior test engineer, I'm working with different radar systems. I'm seeing all different types of systems. I'm primarily focusing on doing testing and integration, and I'm able to work in the States and I can travel overseas short term. So for me, where I am currently in my life, this is best for me because I can get the big money and work overseas. I'll bring in anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a day, depending on which country I go to. And when I'm in the States, it's really a great environment because I'm able to see so many different systems. Now, with this senior test engineer role, I'm making anywhere between $250,000 and $300,000 a year, and I'm 32 years old. And this is the role that I'm currently working, and I honestly don't plan on leaving it anytime soon. And throughout my career, I think the big lesson is that I could really give you all to take away is that you've got to be aggressive with your tech career. You've got to be aggressive with your tech salary. If you're not making the money that you want to make, go out there and find a new job that's going to pay you what you want. Go out there and get the skills and certifications that will get you the money that you're looking for. But never settle and never stay in a role that is not valuing you and that's not paying you the money that you deserve. So that's my salary progression of 16 years of working as a GovTech professional in the GovTech industry. And as you can see, there's a lot of opportunity for you to earn over 6 figures, work remotely, and even work overseas if you work in GovTech. And the good news is right now is the best time to get into this industry if you want to, or right now is the best time for you to scale up your tech salary if you're already working in tech. So if you want to follow the same path as me and get to those 200K plus tech salary roles as soon as possible, I made a completely free course that teaches you how to scale your tech career salary as quickly as possible. Just click the link in the description below to watch my free course that teaches you how to scale your tech salary to 200K plus salary jobs. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.